What's up, everybody? I just wanted to shoot a quick little video here that details how to use the Projection Simulator app by Sony. If you're planning a two-piece projection job, whether you're a DIY person or you're a custom integrator or somebody that does installations of electronic systems, this is the perfect information place. It's engineered by Sony. If you're using Sony products, Sony projectors specifically, this is the application that you need to figure out how big a screen size that you can use at a given distance, or what screen size would work in a given space, or how far the projector needs to be away, or how close this projector can be to a certain screen size. So the very first step you need to take is to either go to the Apple iOS App Store or go to the Google Play Store and search for Projection Simulator by Sony. If you search for Sony Projection Simulator, I haven't been able to find it that way. However, if you put in Projection Simulator by Sony, you'll see this icon pop up on a list of the other applications that are there. And what you're looking for here is the one with the little blue box with the representation of the projector mounted on a pole and the image shining on the wall. So we'll go ahead and pick that. Of course, the first thing that comes up is the end user license agreement. Basically just says you need to agree to this if you're going to go ahead and use this application. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Second step here is we want to go ahead and start the simulator. But you'll see here at the bottom that it says, note, simulator provides theoretical values based on entered dimensions. Real world results may vary slightly due to tolerances. And that could be slight tolerances in the manufacturing of the projector. That could also be slight tolerances in your room, slight tolerances in the mount that you're using, tolerances in the screen that you're using. Maybe it's not exactly the right dimensions is what's listed here. So these are really intended to get you in the ballpark. And also what they should say here, and what I want to make sure that I reiterate, is never, ever, ever plan for the absolute limits of the throw distance. If it says that 14 feet is the minimum lens to screen, I would always, always, always say you need to give yourself maybe 4 or 5 inches, as much, adjustment room as you can, because if you plan for the absolute limit, you mount the projector and you mount the screen, again, some of those tolerance variances could pop up and really, make it so that the image doesn't fit the screen properly. So again, if you're planning out a projection system or you're trying to figure this out, make sure that you give yourself a little bit of room for adjustment, because it's going to give you that ability to make sure that the screen and the image are the exact same size and the picture is on the screen the exact way that you expect it to be, again, without under scanning or over scanning the screen on the wall. So go ahead and click start here. So first thing we're going to decide is, are we mounting this projector on a tabletop and shining it on the wall? Maybe it's like a data projector in a conference room or something like that. Or the inverse of that, we're going to mount the projector on a ceiling mount and hang it from a pole. For my example, I'm going to go ahead and pick ceiling installation. The next screen that's going to pop up here is the series of projector that you're using. So you'll see VPL-F, VPL-E, you'll see all the different model number designations, and then video projector. Video projector is going to refer to the home cinema projectors. So if you're building a movie theater in your house, or you're setting up a screening area in your home or in a customer's home, video projector is going to have all the model numbers that are really designed specifically for that application. However, if you're a commercial integrator or you're planning a two-piece projection system for houses of worship or a commercial application, business, what have you, we'll just look here at the VPL-F. You'll see all of the model numbers that are listed there underneath that series. We'll pick the FHZ75 because it's right at the top. We'll say that it's a 16:9 screen by picking that option in the aspect ratio. And then we have the slider here for screen size. So we're just going to go ahead and say that it's a 196-inch diagonal screen. We have the other options here. We could pick screen width, or we could pick the screen height. So maybe maybe the screen's already mounted on the wall and you don't know what the actual diagonal is. Maybe it's too big or it's inconvenient to figure that out, but you could get screen height or screen width measured pretty easily. And just to be clear, these dimensions that we're looking at here are only the image size. They do not include the frame. So if you're measuring that, make sure that you're measuring inside the border of the screen and not the outside, because again, you're going to have kind of come up with the wrong information. And when we're talking about those tolerance variances, if you've got a 3-inch border around the screen and you add that in as your screen size, guess what? Your screen is going to be, you're calculating for a screen that's going to be 6 inches bigger in one dimension or the other, whether it's width or height. So again, just to be clear, the dimensions that we see down here at the bottom are really about the actual screen size and do not include the border. So next option that we're going to see here is the aspect ratio. So if we go ahead and pick 16:9, just for my example, we'll see that it says the screen and the image are the same size. If we were to pick some of these other options here, we'd have the ability to say, yeah, I want the screen width to be the same because as my projection image, maybe I'm blending some images together. Or the flip side of that is I don't care about the width, but I need the picture to stay at the same height. We can pick that option, but for our example, we're going to try and keep it simple here and probably a little bit more representative of what happens in the real world. 16:9 is the aspect ratio that we're going to be using. And then next option here we'll see pop up is what the throw distance is in either inches, meters, or feet. So obviously with metric, it's pretty easy to round up and down by tens. Imperial standard is a little more challenging, obviously with the fractions and what have you. So we give it to you in inches and we also give it to you in feet. But you'll see here that this projector has different lens options. So in the data grade projectors that Sony produces, definitely going to have lens options on a lot of them. Home cinema projectors, really not going to see a lot of lens options available to you. So just wanted to be clear on that. So we'll go ahead and back out here and we'll go back to more of an example for a home theater application. So we'll pick video projector and you'll see all of the model numbers listed here that are designed to be used in a home theater or home cinema application. And then if you'll see here, some of the models will have asterisks next to them, basically just denoting that they are discontinued models, are not available or supported anymore, but you will still have the information listed for them. And another key thing to note here is when you see VPO HW model numbers, those are going to be high definition or 1080p projectors. If we scroll up here and we see VW model numbers, those are going to denote that they are 4K projectors, okay? So we'll scroll back up here to the top, and for this example, we're going to say that this is a pretty high-end theater, okay? So VPL VW995ES, obviously a very premium Sony projector. We can look at the different aspect ratios that are available to us, whether it's 2:3:5, so your cinema-wide projector, 17:9, which is actually the native aspect ratio of the imagers in a Sony 4K projector. That's really more of the cinema standard. Most homes, or you're not going to use a 17:9 screen, and you're not going to have 17:9 content for that matter. So it's really, by and large, you're going to be using either the 16:9 option or the 2:3:5 option if you're going for that ultra wide aspect ratio. I think by and large the averages would say that in a lot of two-piece projection systems, 16:9 is typically what the aspect ratio that we're going for here, because it's going to match what the content that's been produced by Netflix, you name it, video games, television, what have you, is all going to be broadcast in 16:9. Obviously Blu-ray movies, content that says that it's actually in the ultra wide screen, and you pick that screen aspect, you'd be able to set that up here as well. But again, for my example, 16:9 is the aspect ratio that we're going to use. Next option here, of course, is screen size, and you've got a little slider here, so if that's easier, if you're going to go bigger or smaller. For my example, we're going to go ahead with a 150-inch screen, and again, you can use these little plus and minus dashes to kind of dial it in perfectly. And then you'll also see here below the slider bar that it's going to give the dimensions for what the screen size is. So 150-inch diagonal screen means that it's 131 wide by roughly 74 inches tall. And again, when we talk about those tolerances, could be some slight variances there from the screen manufacturer. So let's just make sure that you give yourself that extra little bit of adjustment room and do not plan for the very limits of what the output of the application says here. So 150-inch diagonal screen, we'll click the next tab, and then input basic data 2 basically says here, it's asking you based on the aspect ratio, is the screen and the image the same width? Is the screen and the image the same height? I'm not using a 17:9 aspect ratio screen. I'm using a 16:9 screen. So the screen and the image are going to be the same size, and these other two options are not going to be available once I pick that, because on the earlier screen I said, hey, this is a 16:9 screen and I want to maintain the same screen size relative to the image size. Click the next tab, and then you're going to get some output data here. So most people focus on what the projection distance is, and that's obviously very critical, and it's going to give you that information in inches, meters, or feet. Obviously in the metric system, pretty easy to round up or round down from centimeters, millimeters, meters, kilometers. It's really up to you. So if you're in Canada or you're in parts of the world that use the metric system, pretty straightforward there. However, if you're using the imperial standard like we are here in the United States where I live, a little more challenging to make sure that you've got it right. So easier to do, easier to round up and down by 10 than it is by 12. So again, it'll give you the output data in inches or in feet, depending on what's easier for you. I think in the case of accuracy, I think inches is probably the best way to go. Just my personal opinion on that. You may be better at math than I am. So output data here, obviously based on a 150-inch diagonal screen with the standard lens that comes on the 995 ES. We've got 176 inches all the way out to 333 inches for the focal range of how far or how close the projector can be to the screen to fill the image properly. Because then I said earlier, never ever plan for the very limits. Certainly the short side being far more critical, probably in most cases, than the long distance. I don't think there's a lot of people that are going to have a 31-foot throw, hopefully, but maybe you have a really long room and you're trying to fill a fairly small screen, 150-inch diagonal screen at 30, almost 32 feet. That's a pretty small screen relative to the length of the room. So again, just want to make sure that we're talking about those things to watch out for. But we'll go back here to inches, and we'll see that, basically from 176 inches lens to screen all the way out to 383 inches lens to screen, we're going to be able to fill that screen properly and give the client or give yourself the image size and fill the screen as they would expect it to be. Because the 995 ES does have interchangeable lens options on it, we have one lens option available from Sony that basically says, hey, maybe I want to have this bigger screen, but in a smaller room. I need the projector to be closer to the screen, obviously, to make this work in this room. With the short throw lens option, we can fill that same 150-inch diagonal screen from 114 inches all the way out to 143. Can't reiterate this enough. Don't plan for those limits. Give yourself maybe, call it 120 inches lens to screen, and maybe 138 inches is the max. Again, just to make sure that you're not underscanning or overscanning, not filling or totally overfilling the screen itself on the wall. So the other thing that you'll see here at the top that kind of gets lost in this application is ceiling to the top of the projected image. So basically, maybe you've got 9 or 10 foot ceilings and you're trying to plan out exactly where the screen's going to be in the room, or you've walked into the room and the screen is already there and you're doing a projector upgrade and you just want to make sure that you put the projector in the exact right spot. If you're doing some finishing work, you don't want to have to patch and paint and do all that stuff all over again just to move the projector an inch or two. It's just a whole lot of extra work and wasted time and money to accomplish something that you could have avoided if you just plan properly and make sure that it's done right the first time. So you can say that, oh, maybe the projector and the top of the screen are really, really close together, which is certainly possible. However, if you were to say, we're 1 foot from the top of the image to where the ceiling starts, you can input that data here, and you're going to see how that impacts what happens on the output of the simulation at the end of this. So I'm going to go back to inches here. I'm going to say that it is 12 inches from the top of the projected image to where the ceiling starts, okay? So this piece of information, or this input data, is really critical to making sure that your simulation result comes out accurate. Click over here to the next tab and the shift range simulation. So what they're referring to here is Sony projectors have a lens shift option. So it'll maintain the rectangular shape of the image itself. There is no keystone adjustment in a Sony home cinema projector. So making sure that the projector is mounted level and square to the screen is really, really important. But once you've done that, you have the option of maybe using a little bit of vertical offset or a little bit of horizontal offset, depending on where the projector is positioned in the room. So the simulator will tell you how much of a range of adjustment that you're going to have from there. So you can choose the vertical position, basically saying, I know that the projector is going to be mounted dead center in the middle of the screen. I don't need any horizontal adjustment. Or I've got a fixed horizontal adjustment and I want to figure out what the available range is vertically, right? So horizontal position is fixed and available vertical shift range is calculated. Vertical position is fixed, and I need to know where the horizontal calculation is, you know, what the adjustments are there. Again, it's really a little more tricky to try to figure out what the offset is if you can't get the projector mounted dead center in the screen. Adds a bunch more complication to the system. Obviously, construction and decor in the room is going to dictate what the position of the projector is, but I think it's always a best practice and a best plan if you're just starting out with a system is to plan for a fixed horizontal position. You know the projector is going to be dead center in the middle of the screen, and really we're going to adjust for the vertical adjustment here in my example anyway. So we'll click forward here, and if you know what the horizontal position of the projector is, basically dead center in the middle of the screen, it will tell you that your projection distance is listed here and what your horizontal shift range is. And in the red options here, it's going to tell you that you're going to have a very limited vertical shift range. If I say that, you know, if I put in that we've got maybe 1 inch off center left or right, you'll see those numbers change. If we put in maybe 5 inches, see, again, we'll see if the calculation, you'll see these numbers change with the standard lens versus what the vertical shift range says here. So go back here to 0 because we're not going to be doing any horizontal shift in my example, and we'll click to the next tab here. So in the output, it'll tell you that ceiling to the top of the projected image is 12 inches. Ceiling to the center of the projected image is 48 inches. And ceiling to the center of the lens could either be minus 10 inches or 107 inches. So basically that means we could mount the projector up to 10 inches above the top of the screen to the center of the lens, all the way down to 107 inches from the ceiling to the center of the lens. So really kind of gives us kind of spells out exactly what we're going to have for the outcome or the output of this installation of this projector. So it really kind of gives you some tools to go ahead and plan a system and ahead of time, so that if you kind of follow along and follow the plan that you set up for yourself here, you're going to come out with a great result. Picture's going to fill the screen properly, and you're going to have the desired outcome at the end of the day. People watching movies and enjoying themselves with their friends and family. And then you have an output here where you can send this maybe to a client or use this as reference in your notes for the installers or the people that are coming out to do the work themselves, so they know exactly where everything's supposed to go. And if you really kind of takes a little bit of time to get used to how the application works here and get comfortable with it, but once you start using it a few times, this will be your go-to tool for planning two-piece projection systems with Sony projectors. Hopefully you found this little video helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them below in the comments, and thanks for watching.